Focus on Liberia. We discuss everything Liberia, from education to politics, arts and culture, entertainment, agriculture, history, religion, family, and technology. Focus on Liberia uncovers and showcases the best of Liberia and shows the world the truth about Liberia. We educate, elevate, and promote all things Liberia. We conduct interviews, panel discussions, debates, and more. Tune in to Focus on Liberia on Facebook and YouTube and be a part of the stories that make up the news.
My name is Abina Johnson, and this is Focus on Liberia. Hit it! From Cape Mount to Cape Palmas, Mount Nimba to Atlantic Ocean, Obomi Hills to Plunged, to educate, elevate, and promote. Yeah, focus on Liberia, for Liberia, Liberia, for Liberia, yeah. From Monday to Sunday, from Monday to Sunday, it's focus on Liberia. Talk about home affairs, in diaspora, current affairs, reliable information, history, talking about culture, politics, education, entertainment, business, sports, advertisement, articulation. Focus on Liberia. Focus on Liberia. Focus on Liberia. From Monday to Sunday. Focus on.
Hey, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this special edition of Focus on Liberia. I have with me today our political analyst, Mr. Mohammed Sharif. Mohammed, welcome.
Thank you, Jimmy.
And today we have a special broadcast because early this morning, the people of Guinea-Bissau woke up to this.
There's no audio.
No audio?
No.
Did you get an audio lately?
No.
Okay. Anyway, we'll fix that later. In the meantime, my brother, this morning we all heard the news. Guinea-Bissau experienced a military takeover. The takeover sometimes is sometimes described as a palace coup, was taken over by the head of the presidential guard. His name is Well, we have it here.
Dennis and Kenya.
Dennis and Kenya. He was supposed to have been the leader, general, brigadier general, and he and his men have seized power from the president, and have now put the country under the high military command for the restoration of national security. It is understood that the president, Umaro Sisoko Embalo, has been dethroned and is under arrest. So, given these circumstances, we know that there was an election just taking place and that they were to announce the results tomorrow. But before that could happen, this military takeover has occurred. So I want to ask you, what actually do we know for certain about the events that led to the military takeover, and what remains unclear?
So, Guinea-Bissau, just to set again, as I usually say, to set the table. Guinea-Bissau is coup prone. There have been a lot of military coup d'etat in Guinea-Bissau. This might be the fifth coup d'etat 5 times now, and more than a dozen other attempts that were not successful. So we're talking, over a dozen, perhaps close to maybe 2 dozen attempts to undermine the democracy in Guinea-Bissau. So to give our viewers a historical backdrop of this country, Guinea-Bissau was occupied by the Portuguese in the 14th century. This was a trading area and slaves. So the Portuguese, went into that area around the mid 1400s and destabilized the African empires that existed. Those pre-existing, African empires that governed, parts of Guinea-Bissau, Guinea-Conakry, all these different places, the Mali, so it was just an extension of the Mali Empire. So what the Portuguese were doing was they were taking slaves from mainland Guinea-Bissau and transporting these slaves to the Cape Verde or Cabo Verde archipelago. Jimmy, this is very interesting history. This is something that we're going to be talking about on Focus on Liberia. In the next few days, we will be talking about Cape Verde or Cabo Verde, as the government has officially announced, over a decade ago, that this is how they want the country to be known. So anyway, so you're going to hear intermittently Cape Verde, Cabo Verde means the same thing for me.
Yeah, to go back to the Portuguese roots, the Cabo Verde. That's
yes,
Portuguese. Yeah,
Cape Green Cape basically means Green Cape, and it's sitting on an archipelago. I don't want to go into Cape Verde because we have a whole show coming up on that. So this breaking news, this breaking event, Jimmy, and the question you asked is about Guinea-Bissau. So we want to zero in on Guinea-Bissau. It's a very interesting country. So the Portuguese were taking African slaves from Guinea-Bissau to the island of Santiago in Cape Verde. and they occupied those two areas, and so a lot of the citizens in Cape Verde are the same people who are from Guinea-Bissau.
Right.
So this went on for 300 to 400 years, and then in 1959 there was a movement called the PAIGC, which stands for the African Party for the Independence of Guinea-Bissau and Cape Verde. And this party was headed by the revolutionary Pan-Africanist scholar as well, Amilcar Cabral.
Mhm.
So Cabral was the leader of the PAIGC. He studied in Portugal. He's an agronomist, very educated, came back, worked for the Portuguese government for a little bit, and his head was in the revolution.
Right. This is the guy who they named Cabral Estate in Liberia after.
Correct. That is correct. So, Cabral was, he moved his headquarters with the acquiescence of Ahmed Sékou Touré of Guinea to Conakry. So the PAIGC, as a guerrilla movement, as a revolutionary Pan-Africanist liberation movement, was moved to Conakry, Guinea in the late 1960s. The late 1960s, actually around 1959, when they were moved to Conakry. And they started the armed struggle against the Portuguese colonial empire in 1963. Amilcar Cabral, to just fast forward, move forward with this, Amilcar Cabral was killed in Conakry, Guinea, by a member of the PAIGC who was allegedly working for the Portuguese imperialists. Cabral did a lot in Guinea, and Ahmed Sékou Touré will have to give him credit here because Ahmed Sékou Touré was a Pan-Africanist, and Ahmed Sékou Touré, like Kwame Nkrumah, believed that if 1 inch of African soil was still under the yoke of colonialism, then Africa is still not free.
Yeah.
So Sékou Touré's support to the Guinea-Bissau freedom movement was not just in terms of hosting them. Sékou Touré, according to reports, the Guinean army assisted the Guinea-Bissau and Cape Verdean revolutionaries and freedom fighters. It is alleged that the former president, the former military leader of Guinea, Lansana Conte, was a guy who even fought in Guinea-Bissau on behalf of the revolutionaries, the freedom fighters in Guinea-Bissau.
Okay,
and so
let's try to bring it to the focus on Guinea-Bissau today. Now, there was an election that took place,
right,
and both the opposition leader and the incumbent leader are both claiming victory. So the military is claiming that they intervened to prevent an alleged destabilization plot involving political actors and drug traffickers. How credible is this claim?
Yeah, what you normally want to do, and I'll be quick with it, Jimmy, is to lay some kind of groundwork so that people
Right.
understand. Since
Right.
we're in the business of educating, so you want to lay the groundwork a little bit so you see why we're having all these troubles in that part of West Africa. So I'll be very quick with it. So now, Cabral, the assistance, from Guinea to the Guinea-Bissau revolutionaries, to the chagrin of the Portuguese, and the Portuguese actually came after Sékou Touré to try to kill him, that invaded Guinea in 1970, and they launched a seaborne attack on the capital, Conakry, and they bombarded Sékou Touré's, residence. So they thought that he had died. They thought that they killed him, but Sékou Touré somehow escaped this attack on the Guinean capital. So Touré survived, Cabral survived. So the Portuguese were defeated. So this was a failure for the Portuguese imperialists at this point in time. However, they persisted and killed Cabral. So the PIGC, the struggle was then assumed by his brother, Louis Cabral, and Aristides Pereira, who was another one of those revolutionaries. And Aristides Pereira was from the island of Cabo Verde. Fast forward, Guinea-Bissau declared independence. The freedom fighters declared independence in 1973. Portugal didn't recognize this until a year later. And Louis Cabral became president, the first president. Cabral is the brother of Amílcar Cabral. When President Tolbert built the Cabral estate, housing estate, around the Old Road area, I believe that's where it's at.
Yeah.
This estate, housing estate, was named for Amílcar Cabral. Tolbert being the freedom fighter, the supporter of African freedom movement that he was, he recognized the contribution of people like Amílcar Cabral and those, people like that. So he named this housing estate. Many people don't know this, but it was named after Amílcar Cabral. During the ceremony when that housing estate was opened, Jimmy, Louis Cabral came to Monrovia.
Mm-hmm.
So it was, an honor to his brother's legacy. And so the country became independent. How did this trouble that we're in now, that we're talking about now, started? It started in 1980. So Louis Cabral was president from 1974, 73, 74 to 1980. So in 6 short years, the military regime, a military leader called João Bernardo Vieira overthrew Louis Cabral. And this is how the military started intervening in Bissau-Guinean politics. And Cabral was incarcerated for about a year, released and exiled to different countries. He ended up in Portugal. He went to Cuba and then ended up in Portugal. After that, Cabral was very disinterested in the politics of Guinea-Bissau. And after João Bernardo Vieira, there have been succession of coup d'etats or attempted coup d'etats to today. And before I land on to today, João Bernardo Vieira was viciously murdered in 2009. João Bernardo Vieira, his home was attacked in a military takeover, another military assassination. His home was attacked, and Bernardo Vieira, the roof of his residence collapsed, and the president survived. So when he came outside, group of rebellious military officers arrested Cabral, took him to his mother-in-law's house, and hacked him to death. He was basically mutilated, by these military officers. And that's how João Bernardo Vieira was murdered. And so what is happening now with the military takeover is nothing new. You heard, or I heard, Umaru Sissoko Mbalo 2 days ago, a day ago, yesterday. I watch Bissau Guinean television, and the president said, I am telling you, I will be, this is historical. I will be the first president in Bissau Guinean history to be re-elected, to finish, not only finish my term, but to be re-elected for a second term. That was just yesterday. Fernando Diaz is the opposition leader.
Yeah.
So what happened was after the votes, after the ballot, the ballots are still being counted. Both guys declare victory already. But that is nothing new in Africa. That is nothing new in the democratic process. You can declare victory all you want, but the decision must come from the Elections Commission. So people were waiting, observers, ourselves who were interested in this kind of thing, we were waiting for the Elections Commission to announce a decision. And this morning, what we heard, what we saw, was a group of military officers led by the head of the Presidential Guard, General Dennis Nkanya, who has now overthrown his boss, Umaru Sissoco Embalo. And this is how we got here.
So, can we consider this coup or a counter coup or a preemptive military intervention? How should it be categorized?
This is not a counter coup. This is how Guinea-Bissau, as lay out the sequence of events that have occurred in Guinea-Bissau history. This is what has always happened. The military has always intervened in Bissau Guinean politics.
Right.
I was saying to myself last night, Jimmy, I was saying to myself, I said, if you probably pay me, $10 million to run for president in Guinea-Bissau, I probably wouldn't run for president, because these guys are not, far away from, the intervention of the military. It's you will either be killed by the military or arrested by the military, or your programs will be disrupted by the military. And this is exactly what's happening. So it is really in line or very much consistent with what has happened in Guinea-Bissau over the years.
But why does the military continue to be the ultimate arbiter of political power in Guinea-Bissau, despite repeated transitions?
Because historically, the military has always intervened. So keep in mind, it was back in 1980 when it was a young independent nation that Joao Bernardo Vieira overthrew Louis Cabral. Louis Cabral was considered this emblematic figure, right? The brother of Amilcar Cabral, the brother of this freedom fighter, who was now deposed by a military officer. And Bernardo Vieira stayed there for about 2 decades or so before there was an election. And once there was an election, he had left. I mean, there was he also was the target of a military rebellion, and Ansuman Mane. That's a whole different story. General Ansuman Mane launched a civil war in 1999 over to Vieira. Vieira then left. Vieira came back, won election, and he won election, was there for 3 years or so, and then he got savagely murdered by the military. So, if you will, it's a consistent for them. It's a consistent process. You have a year or two of civilian rule, election, followed by a coup d'etat, an election followed by another coup d'etat, an election followed by an assassination of a president, or the arrest of a president, and the hijacking of democracy. So of a lot of the West African countries, and we've begun a series now, as you know, where we're talking about democracy in Africa. Guinea-Bissau really has struggled with upkeeping a stable democracy. So the government is unable to really respond to the needs of the people of Guinea-Bissau. And Jimmy, one of the things in this election, some of the issues in this election was about the economy, poverty and unemployment. So they had a very lively debate, Mr. Mbalo and the opposition.
Yes.
So that was a process that, had they allowed that to evolve, maybe they were getting somewhere. Having said that, though, Mr. Mbalo had developed some dictatorial tendencies. He
Yes, he
had,
does have a military background. He was a former general.
right, he was a former general, and he himself was responsible for the dissolution of parliament. So he had
That's right.
dissolved parliament.
He dissolved parliament and ruled by decree. Correct.
He ruled by decree. He also was instrumental, from what the people are, Bissau Guineans are saying, he was instrumental, the opposition community in Bissau saying Mbalo was instrumental in banning the PAIGC from participating in this year's election. The PAIGC is the independent movement, is the movement that struggled, that fought for Guinea-Bissau's independence. So that's a big deal. So he had a lot of things going against him. And in fact, the PAIGC has supported Fernando Diaz. Fernando Diaz is from a different party. But because the PAIGC was prohibited from running in this election, they threw their weight behind Fernando Diaz. So this election was very close, even though it was assumed that Mbalo would have pulled this out, but it was very, very close because of the support of the PAIGC to the opposition.
So is there any credible way to determine who actually won the election at this point?
There's no way to know that both men were claiming victory. So many are saying that that Mbalo would have pulled out a very slim margin, but there's no way to know because the opposition was also supported by the PAIGC that campaigned with the opposition, that threw their weight behind the opposition. And in both Guinea-Bissau and Cape Verde, the PAIGC is a big deal.
Yeah, it's curious what is ECOWAS saying, because not too long ago, the president Mbalo was he suspended the ECOWAS presence there. We sent them packing, didn't he?
Yeah, he sent them packing. Remember, in our own Liberian situation, when Charles Taylor said, the status of forces agreement, I don't recognize the status of forces agreement. This is out of the window. But then when you get in trouble, then you call ECOWAS back. Mbalo did that. Mbalo, during the crisis with the National Assembly, he was very much opposed to ECOWAS intervention. He didn't want them intervene. But from reports, there was an attempt against him about a year ago, and he started to favor, the return of some level of foreign presence in Guinea-Bissau, because at that point he didn't trust the military. And I think that what he should have done is to allow ECOWAS to stay. You see what Ellen Johnson did? Ellen Johnson is very smart, right? She's a very smart.
Oh yeah,
she's a very smart.
That's our Maradona.
Yes, she allowed ECOWAS to stay, okay, for the duration of her presidency. I'm not fooling around with y'all. I'm not gonna play with y'all. I'm going to allow, okay, call them foreign forces, call them whatever. I'm going to allow them to stay. I will work for my democracy. I'll work for my presidency. I'll work to maintain my presidency. And then once I'm done, you can get rid of your foreign forces. That's on you. But that is the thing that African leaders have to.
I think they left even before Weah could take office.
Right.
They had already departed.
Right.
So what kind of signal you see does this send to other fragile democracies in the region? What kind of signal does this send?
It sent a terrible signal to other democracies. Again, we have this series now on Roundtable Africa called Democracy in Africa. And what that series is doing is that it's looking at, all of these different things and the question that you ask. And, we'll be talking about Cape Verde. So, directly to your question, the message that this is sending, if nothing if this is allowed to stand, then what will happen is there are copycats around the region, outside of the region, that might look at this, that might look at Guinea-Bissau. Of course, they've always been looking at Guinea-Bissau because Guinea-Bissau has never been stable for a prolonged period of time.
That's right.
You may have a year here, 2-3 years of peace, followed by 5, 6, 7 years of instability. And not to mention the fact that, there are reports that, Guinea-Bissau now is the conduit for, the drug trade to other countries in the region.
Yeah, let's speak to that. It was labeled as a drug state by the OAU at one point, wasn't it? Isn't it?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure who it was. You mean the AU?
The AU, that is.
I'm not sure. But I do know that, there have been reports coming out of Guinea-Bissau that, it's being used as a transit point for drugs coming from Latin America.
Yeah.
And there was also reports that similarly on the island of Cape Verde some years ago that, drugs were transiting there. But what the Cape Verdeans did was that they put together a decisive response. And so now they are really clear of it, I believe. And, you can't say the same of Guinea-Bissau because, look, it's I hate to say it, but it's, almost akin to a failed state. You don't have a stable democracy. The economy is very weak. People are unemployed. There's degradation in the education system. All these different institutions, the very weak institutions to uphold the Bissau Guinean democracy. And so when you have a president, anytime you have a democratic leader, a president elected democratically, you only have a period of 5 years. There has been no president re-elected in Guinea-Bissau. Omaro Sissoko Mbalo would have been the first to have made history, but the military ensured that history was not made, that continuity was disrupted. They have no grand plan. When you listen to them, they really have no plan other than occupying the presidential mansion.
So what must change? Because you see, this is a country that is repeatedly having military intervention, and which compromises its democratic stability. What must change politically, constitutionally, or socially to prevent the next coup? I mean, this is repeated every other year, just like you said, every 2 years or so, we have this military coup to no avail.
Yeah. What must change? I think that as a collective, the West African states, we had some years ago as a outcome of the Liberian Civil War and ECOWAS's intervention in the Liberian Civil War. You had a paradigm that was, admired throughout Africa. And what was that? That was that collectively, the African countries were coming together to ensure that no more coup d'etats. We're not doing any more military coups. We're not doing any more military intervention. So therefore, when Yahya Jammeh tried to extend his rule, ECOWAS said no. And they ran him out of there and allowed the democratically elected president to take office. Yeah. In Mali, when the military intervened in the Malian democracy at that time, ECOWAS intervened and they took the military leader out of there through some kind of negotiation and allowed for a democratic election. Similarly, in Sierra Leone, in other places as well, in the West African region, we saw that in Burkina Faso as well, and some other countries in West Africa. That was undermined with these old leaders like Alpha Conde and Alassane Ouattara. You know, these guys undermine the ability of ECOWAS to intervene forcefully because, mind you, Guinea is a strong member of ECOWAS. The Guinean military is very strong. Guinea has a very powerful military, which is a legacy of Agnes Sékou Touré. Cote d'Ivoire has a very strong economy, a large economy, one of the biggest economies in West Africa. So when you combine those two powerful countries, one with this military might and the other with the economic might, so they were able to coalesce, So when you talk about ECOWAS intervention in countries, and you have countries like that, and Nigeria as well, the superpower of Africa, I think it still is, when you have those countries coming together to pressurize a Yahya Jammeh, for example. And then Senegal, don't forget Senegal. Senegal also has a powerful military, and Senegal has the clout because they are real, democracy. Senegal has had a stable democracy for a very long time. So when you have those countries bring their power, their clout to maybe to someone like Yahya Jammeh, they had a standing at the time because those guys at the time had not started violating their own constitution. Ouattara was still in his second term at the time, maybe first term or second term. Alpha Conde was probably in his first and second term at the time when they were doing all these different interventions. Some of the interventions actually predate them. But what I'm saying is, during that time, during that first term in office, it was a time that we can all say now that yes, there was a time that ECOWAS was powerful. ECOWAS was intervening in all these areas where they perceived trouble. They even intervened in Guinea-Bissau at one point. And when that stopped, you have this issue now of where the military is saying, well, if there's no intervention, so we can do it, we can go in and do whatever we want to do. And that is what's going on now. These guys know that nobody's going to come over there tomorrow morning and impose sanction on Guinea-Bissau. Nobody's going to come over there and bring an intervention force. I will land on this question, on this. When the Guinean military overthrew after Conte's death, and there was a Guinean military officer, Musa Dadis Camara, when he took the presidency, one of the things that happened was that his people, he tried to stay on to run for president. And the civilian population said, no, we don't want you. And there was a protest in the capital, Conakry, at the stadium. And Dadis Camara unleashed the military, and people were killed. Some reports said, over 150 people were murdered. And I heard him say, well, if there's an intervention force, I'm ready. I will not allow the intervention force to come in here. But the fact that he had that at the back of his mind, that there will be an intervention force, was enough to bother him, was enough to say, okay, anytime there will be an intervention force. So all I'm saying here is that the fear of an intervention force, once that's taken away, you're going to have a replication of these coups d'etats. And thanks to these guys, guys like Alassane Ouattara, guys like Alpha Conde, and some other factors, they weren't the only reason, but they started the ball rolling. So because of this now, you don't have any more ECOWAS intervention. So when you ask the question, what must happen? These are the things that must happen. The principal thing for me is there must be a deliberate effort on the part of ECOWAS to say never again. We don't need any more coup d'etats. We can't go back to the dark ages of military intervention in politics.
But Sheriff, what do you take of the argument that partly ECOWAS should stop tolerating soft coups, not just military pushes, but third-term manipulations, constitutional changes to remove term limits, illegal dissolution of parliaments, sham election. What if ECOWAS begins to frown on these sort of manipulations and maneuvers? Wouldn't that help to establish a no zero tolerance for unconstitutional changes?
And that's exactly the reason why the military coup d'etat engaged. I didn't have a problem with it. In fact, I was happy that the military intervened in Guinea to remove Alpha Conde. Why? Because he started the constitutional violation. You had 2 terms. His 2 terms of office, he had his first term and the second term. Second term was up. His terms are over now. So in year 9, approaching year 10, he then writes a new constitution. And he remade his government. He renewed himself. Well, the old constitution didn't matter now. This is a new republic. So the old constitution was a different republic. So the new constitution is now a new republic. So because this is a new republic, he argued that he can stand again and run again for president, and that's what he did. So that is a coup d'etat. Yeah. And you're correct. And, it's a constitutional coup d'etat. I would even argue this is an unconstitutional coup d'etat. So why are we calling it constitutional coup d'etat? It's an unconstitutional coup d'etat. You use methods. You manipulate the Constitution to stay in office. Alassane Ouattara has done that now. Ouattara has been there for how many years now? Over 20 years, maybe pushing on to 25 years, maybe. So that is another form of coup d'etat. And ECOWAS has not been able to do anything about these people, about their colleagues that have been violating the Constitution, who are not wearing military uniform. So no, not all coup makers wear the military uniform. There are some in civilian uniforms, like Alpha Conde and Alassane Ouattara. And that is the reason why ECOWAS now is very much debilitated. They can't do anything now because their own friends, when, for example, Alpha Conde undermined the Guinean democracy, there was nothing, silence. There was silence from ECOWAS. So what are you going to tell the young guys that took, their armored vehicles and their, military weapons that morning in September of 2021 to say, we're going to remove Alpha Conde? So ECOWAS had no standing. They had lost their legitimacy to intervene in all these other countries that they were intervening in before, because their membership, the guys that have been supporting ECOWAS, that have been supporting all these interventions, are now the same individuals who are violating their own laws, who are violating their own procedures. And so that is a problem. So as long as you have that, these army officers now have a very clear lane to always continuously intervene in politics.
Here are other suggestions that ECOWAS lead the way in establishing a West African code of military conduct. explicitly banning participation in coups and unconstitutional orders, makes movement in coups a lifetime bar from holding office in the region. But on the other hand, the citizens argue if there was no corruption, there will be no need for coup. How do we balance those two opposing arguments?
It's a difficult balancing act. So there are conditions that precipitate some of the military coup d'etats. Some coups are because the military also want to taste power. It's what is it usually? Isn't it usually the head of the presidential guard? Is that one person? Usually males. They're usually males. Is that one guy who's taking the money back when you go into Switzerland when you steal the country's money and you're going to foreign bank and you're putting them in foreign bank account, in the Swiss bank account? When you steal money and you come into the United States to expend your country's money, when you go into France to purchase properties and all these different things, is that one guy who's always following you around? That's your bodyguard. That's your head of the presidential guard. He knows everything. He knows what is going on inside the presidential palace. He knows the amount of exorbitance, the money that's flying around. He knows that how much money your wife, who's unemployed. Most of the presidential spouses are really, they don't have a job. They have no career. I mean, Sylvia Bongo in Gabon, this woman was running an African country. A white woman was running an African country while her debilitated husband was living in a hospital in Casablanca somewhere. It's a disgrace that this woman and her young son were running Gabon, especially Sylvia Bongo was running the country. And so what happened? The nephew of the president, Brice Oligui, he knew everything. He knew where they were putting all this money. He knew everything because he was toting the money bag for them. He's the bodyguard. He was carrying. So now, if I keep toting your bag, one of these days, I want to look inside too.
Or take
I want to know what's in there. Okay. You don't think I want to, get the biggest cars for myself too? You don't think I need those fat bank accounts too? You don't think I need to sleep in that mansion, that palace that you have? Okay. You don't think I want the same thing for myself, my wife, and my family? You bet I do need those same opportunities. So hence the reason why some of these military officers will get up one morning and say no more and take their bosses hostage. That's what happened in Niger. The Niger military coup. He was General Chani was the head of the presidential guard. The coup in Gabon, General Brice Oligui was the head of the presidential guard battalion. The coup now in Guinea-Bissau, Dennis Nkanya was the head of the presidential guard. If you go to Guinea-Conakry, General Doumbouya was the right-hand man of Alpha Conde. And this is how these things happen. So the trusted guy, the trusted son, if you will. Oh, he's my son. Don't worry about him. He's, oh yeah, that's my son. Okay, he's going to come after you, you corrupt dictator. How do we resolve this? Let's end these dictatorship. Let's have these consistent elections. And when you have these elections, respect the will of the people. Senegal has a consistent democracy. The Senegalese military, Senegal is going on to how many decades now There's never been a military intervention into Senegalese politics. And I hope this continues, stays that way. A country that we're going to talk about later, Jimmy, is Cape Verde. Very peaceful. Cape Verde.
But don't they have a mixed heritage as well? You see, I think a lot of Portuguese settled there, didn't right? And you will notice the tone of the skin of the people. You can see that they have that mixed heritage.
Right, mixed heritage. It's a lot of Africa. So it was, Cape Verde Archipelago was the hub for the transatlantic slave trade. So that area where they brought Africans from Nigeria, especially from Bissau, from Guinea-Bissau, and that was a place where the Portuguese had their plantations, and they took some of our people there to work, and they sold a lot of them to slave traders. So it was like their home, and Amilcar Cabral understood these contradictions. How these people who call themselves a democracy, who doing all these things for their people, and they're coming in here and they're taking our people as slaves, and they enslave us, and they're taking all of our resources. So Cabral understood these things. Cabral studied in Portugal. He's an agronomist. He was supposed to work for the imperialists. Cabral used his education and his skills, his intellectual skills, to combat the imperialists, to create the PAIGC, which was a resistance movement to Portuguese imperialism. And with the backing of the revolutionary leader of Guinea, Ahmed Sékou Touré, Cabral moved to Conakry, from where they used Guinea as a base to attack the Portuguese imperialists. At the time in Guinea-Bissau, there were 35,000 Portuguese soldiers, and the African soldiers, the independent fighters, only number about 8 to 10,000 fighters that took on this massive army and defeated this army and gained their independence. So we need the Amilcar Cabrals. We need more Amilcar Cabrals. We need more of these people. We need more Sékou Tourés and Kwame Nkrumah, Modibo Keita. We need more of these people. We need more William Tolbert, people who care about their people, not about dictatorship. We need more of these people.
Right.
Now,
So some would say that the gentleman in Burkina Faso today, Traore, he could be one of these true leaders, and the fact that ECOWAS now has taken such a stance that you have Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger, all of them have left ECOWAS,
right,
weakening the intervention of ECOWAS. Whereas it is just what you said, one of these guys could be the next Patrice Lumumba or Amilcar Cabral.
right.
Many people praise Traore, but of course, we've seen where military juntas have not done good for the country. How do we navigate these waters where we have a true leader and we distinguish that from somebody who just simply wants to grab power, as in the case with Campari?
Right. So the dynamics is, you can't say that these kind of analysis, flow in a straight line, right? So you're not going to say all militaries are bad.
Okay.
So we're not sitting here saying that. We saw that example, right? History has taught us that, some of the military regimes have actually done good for their people. They've left legacy. Jerry
Rawlings, exactly.
Jerry Rawlings, left a democracy in Ghana that is still one of the most stable democracies in Africa today. That was after a violent, military coup d'etat. When those former leaders were executed in Ghana. So, and all the stability that you have in Ghana now is the result of what Jerry Rawlings did. So similarly, you're having the evolution of similar tendency in Burkina Faso right now. The revolution, the early revolution in Burkina Faso, I would argue was hijacked. The Sankara revolution was hijacked, and so what you have is like a reincarnation of Thomas Sankara, where Traore is doing something different, and it's hard to explain because here's a guy who was not elected by his people, but he's doing things that have never been done before, Jimmy. I mean, it's amazing. Here is a young guy who's college educated, homegrown, educated back home in Burkina Faso, but wasn't elected by his people. And yet, this is a guy who, in the wake of a war, with the terrorists, with the Islamists and all these different, terrorists that are attacking, the people in the north. But here is a guy who said that we can fight a war and still build our country and still have a country that's self-reliant and self-sufficient, that can feed itself. And not only that, that can also grow these, factories and different things of that nature, so that we are proud of ourselves as Africans, as Burkinabés. It's amazing what's going on, what he has been able to achieve in this short period of time. And so the people love him. His people love him. Africa loves him. He's universally acclaimed. So again, not all military leaders are bad, as history has taught us. The examples of Jerry Rawlings and Traore come to mind. And even in next door, Liberia's neighbor, even in Guinea, some of the things that I'm hearing now is that Doumbouya is doing a good job of with infrastructure, we're building roads, we're doing the things that the civilian administration didn't do. Of course, now he has turned over the iron ore mine to some foreign groups. I think the Chinese or so on. That secret kept for years. Because what you really want to do is that you don't want to turn these things over to foreigners. You want to find a way
for pennies on the dollar.
Right. You want to find a way where you can manufacture things at home.
Yeah.
You can have, significant government intervention into the economy. So I don't know if I don't know much about that, but what I've heard now is that they've opened their mind to foreign investors now.
That's correct. I think they call it the
Simandu mines.
Simandu mines,
one of the largest in the world.
They've opened it up, and from what I'm understanding, it's only to export those.
And that is really, I'm wary of that. I'm wary of people coming into Africa to just export, take our stuff and go, like bombing hills, right? They dig holes and they leave, like bomb mines. They dig holes and leave. Yekepa, other places. That's what they do. So as historians that we are, we follow these, we follow history, and you learn from these things. So leaders, there's a way in which leaders should look at other examples to say, okay, I think we're going to do something differently. So I will hope that, one of these days that, they think about doing something like that. I mean, these people, all their interests, whether it's the Chinese or the Russians or the everybody, what they're interested in is our resources. And
Yeah.
we have to understand that.
I
We
mean,
have to really, really understand that. They're interested in our resources.
exactly. Exactly. Well, that we should start that. But years a gold standard. Since we're coming to the end of this, Botswana,
Yes.
I think that will be one of the gold standards in Africa. They
Yeah.
refuse early attempts by foreign companies to control the entire diamond economy.
Yes.
They negotiated hard between De Beers, De Beers, the diamond family of the world, for a 50-50 venture in Botswana.
Yeah.
They required that sorting, processing, and value addition occur in Botswana, not abroad.
Yeah.
They used revenue to fund free free education, healthcare, and infrastructure.
Yeah.
And they maintained strict governance and transparency, avoiding the resource curse. This is how you do it. But why do we see in this late day, with this knowledge, it's our sister nation, Guinea. I think Guinea, Sierra Leone, and Ivory Coast should be all one country, and Liberia.
They should be.
I don't feel it should be one. It's
they should be. Right.
Yeah, it's our sister on the other side about to give the minerals away like how we did with Lamco and all that sort of thing.
Yeah.
In this late 2025, after Sekou tried best.
Yeah. He tried his best to keep these people out. He said, "No, I'm not going to give my resources to you."
Why can't
and
they?
This is why. Yeah, and this is why right now, Jimmy. Look, Guinea is so very wealthy. When I was traveling, before I came to the States, and you're riding from Zeriko to Conakry. I mean, the landscape. I just love the landscape. I mean, waterfalls and all these different things. So this guy, Ken Rose, used to work with the International Rescue Committee, and he said, "Look, this is a beautiful country." And Ken Rose, I remember I was with him and his girlfriend at the time. Now I think it's his wife. I haven't seen Ken in years since we left Guinea. So Ken, just driving through Conakry along the sea coast, and Ken would say, "My God, this is so beautiful. Look at this. Look at these beaches. Look at this." But that can also be said of Liberia. That can also be said of Sierra Leone. That can be said of Cote d'Ivoire. And the Guinea-Bissau that we're talking about now is sitting along the sea coast, along the Atlantic coast. That can also be said of some of these other countries. But particularly when you look at Liberia and Guinea and Sierra Leone, in that belt, the wealth that's there, the untapped wealth that's in some of these countries is unbelievable. It is really unbelievable. And so, Jimmy, I hope that when we get to Botswana, that you will come on, because it will be part of the the series, Democracy in Africa, because Botswana is a very stable democracy. I'm glad you touch on that. It's a very stable democracy, and we want to talk about Botswana at some point also. In the not too distant future. So, what will happen is that when we have a real democratic setup, when we have a government that's responsive to the needs of their people, what you then have is the maximization of the resources. So the resources are maximized. People, because when you have all these voices, the critical voices, the voices that support the ruling party, or the party in power, and the voices that are critical, all of these voices are important ingredients to building the country. But when you don't have when you don't have a good democracy, when you have a weak democracy, like, ours is still very tenuous. So what you have in these kind of democracies that are very tenuous is that you have a lot of sycophants, people who must praise the president, people who must be the president's daughters or sons
But
to
it's
get the
not for
job.
nothing, Sheriff. They want something.
But that's what I'm saying. You must say, like you, Jimmy, would say, the president, oh, the president is my big brother.
Yeah.
Oh, that's my brother. That's my uncle. Oh, President Barker is my father. Okay, never mind. He doesn't know your father or anything like that. So there are people walking around on earth saying, oh yeah, he's my father. Oh yeah, that's my uncle. He doesn't know half of these people, but they're claiming that because the president is supposed to be the father of the nation.
That's right.
And when we have this kind of presidency, when we have this kind of democracy where the president must be the father of everybody, he's not my father. I'm sorry. It's not my father.
Yeah, but
He doesn't know my father.
right.
My
It's
father doesn't
because of
know him.
the weak institutions.
He's not my uncle.
We're not
But that's
focusing on
right.
building the institutions. So it all leave on the individual instead of the institution being, what we look up to.
Right.
It's the individual, and
Right.
if this continues,
right,
you're going to be weak. You have to build the institutions.
It has to be institutions so that when you have these institutions, so that you can put anybody in there, it's almost like plug and play.
Thank you.
Okay, look, something happened in the United States recently, and I admire this so much. Okay, there was a mayor election in New York where the young mayor-elect, his campaign was fiery. His campaign, it was a lot of time that, him and the president went back and forth. Even President Trump went back and forth. It was just, they just debate back, criticizing one another back and forth. But when he won, President Trump, I mean, people might differ with all of these different things, but all I'm looking at is the fact that these two men were even able to have a meeting. President Trump invited him. And if you watch our press conference, the journalist asked him, the mayor, both of them, real uncomfortable question. So one of the question was, oh, you've called the president a fascist. Do you still believe that now?
Yeah.
When he tried to toe tap around it, Trump said, no, it's okay. Just okay. It's okay. You can call me. So all I'm saying here is, in Africa, we can do the same. Me and you can have differences. If you're the president, Jimmy, and I'm in the opposition, I should be allowed to criticize you without losing my damn job. But that can happen in Liberia. I criticize you, then I'll lose my job.
Your life.
Comes in, then he's your life, yeah. Barker comes in, then he's taking on the speaker. The speaker gotta go. You can't work with the speaker. Ellen does the same thing. I can't work with that speaker because the speaker is in opposition. Because we have these weak institutions. So any president can come in and exert their power and exert their influence and do whatever they want to do. They will take the Supreme Court. They will take the national legislature. They already occupy the executive mansion. So they take all three branches of government. In the places, some of the places that we're going to talk about now, Jimmy, those democracies, I think Liberia should learn from those democracies. And one of them, I continue to advertise, is Cape Verde. It doesn't matter. They have very strong institutions, and that's a very small country. But they have one of the most stable democracies in Africa.
Mm-hmm. I mean,
and we can learn from them. Instead of going to Singapore to learn from the people of Singapore how they're doing the democracy, I think we can stay on the West African coast. Go to Cape Verde, go to Botswana, learn from these people. Go to Mauritius, learn from them on how they are implementing their democracy and how they're running their economy. That their economy is stable along with their political system. when I did my research, one of the things that I learned is that Cabo Verde is one of the countries that's free of malaria. Free of malaria, Jimmy. How did they do that? Can we have a group of scientists from Liberia go over there and find out from these people? This is a country of 500,000 people, but they're getting stuff done. This is a country with 10% arable land. So therefore, they're deficit in terms of, their agricultural output. That's the problem they have. So they're relying a lot on tourism and the service sector. So can we learn from them? Yes, we can. And we should and we must learn from these people.
Right. That's right. Okay, so let's wrap it up for the evening.
Yes,
your closing statement before we wrap it all up here.
Yeah. So finally, what is happening in Guinea-Bissau right now? It's very sad. It's very unfortunate that this country that should have been, the example, this glorious example of African liberation, the example of the Black race, our capacity, the Black men and women's capacity to govern themselves. It's now a laughing stock in the world. And this is unacceptable because a group of people, whether it's for tribal, ethnic, incessant ethnicity, ethnocentrism, whether it's for economic reasons or whatever reason it is, or the interference of colonial powers and what have you, that you continue to have this kind of intervention by the military in politics. It is not the way to go. Also, anytime you have civilian leaders, and these civilian leaders continue to manipulate the Constitution and continue to adopt these undemocratic tendencies, the outcome has always not been good for some of the countries in the region, particularly Guinea-Bissau. Some of the outcomes, Jimmy, have been very tragic and brutal. As I mentioned, how Joao Bernardo Vieira was murdered. I mean, not only that General Vieira, former retired General Bernardo Vieira was, not only that he was murdered, he was taken away from his compound and somehow taken to his mother-in-law's house. I mean, the idea that you can do that to a human being, to someone who has served the country as a president, it is really baffling to me. And this man, according to a reporter who was in Guinea-Bissau at the time of Vieira's death, I mean, he was chopped up. He was hacked to death. And so sometimes in Guinea-Bissau, as a president, you're lucky to be alive. And I think Mbalo must be thinking, although this is a very sad situation, he must be thanking his lucky stars that they didn't kill him. Because in Guinea-Bissau, the other thing that they do besides overthrowing presidents is that they murder their leaders and hijack democracy. And so, what to do now to prevent this? I think you need, strong institutions, strong democratic institutions. You need leaders, both in the military and the civilian leadership. Because if the military leadership is not patriotic to the nation, the military leadership will always intervene. But if you have an army that's out there protecting the democracy, like the Senegalese army, the army has been able to protect the Senegalese democracy. The Cape Verdean security forces have been able to protect the Cape Verdean democracy. Botswana, You don't think there are people in Botswana, military people in Botswana, that also want to be presidents? There are, but they have always preserved the democracy. And those who want to run for public office have always gone back to retire from the military and run for public office. And so, as long as, those things are not happening in the neighborhood, because, Guinea-Bissau is in our neighborhood. It's not far. It's not too far away from Liberia. So anything that happens in Guinea-Bissau could have, some kind of, impact on Liberia. And so, again, I want to close with going back to, what we've started now is this, the democracy in Africa is something that we're going to continue to do. Hopefully we'll come up with a schedule. And right. I hope to see you on, Jimmy.
Yes, definitely. So, folks, before we leave you, it has been done. It has been done in Africa. Why we can get best out of our resources and maintain a democracy free, fair,
yes,
and free.
Yes.
Why
it's
can't
doable,
we?
It has been done. Yes.
So we can do it.
Yep, we can do it.
We will be bringing you some more information from some more facts, and we'll be discussing these things in detail. Just stay tuned to your favorite station, Focus on Liberia. And we always say, no matter where you're from, we are all Liberians.
Right, that's right.
We are Liberians. Liberia is our home. Liberian people.
At Focus on Liberia, we discuss everything Liberia, from education to politics, arts and culture, entertainment, agriculture, history, religion, family, and technology. Focus on Liberia uncovers and showcases the best of Liberia and shows the world the truth about Liberia. We educate, elevate, and promote all things Liberia. We conduct interviews, panel discussions, debates, and more. Tune in to Focus on Liberia on Facebook and YouTube and be a part of the stories that make up the news.
This is Focus on Liberia, and I am Dennis Jah.